Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful once again to have the honor and the joy to connect with you yet another Sunday. So I hope this finds you well. I hope this finds your heart open, and there's some powerful things to discuss today. So thank you again for joining me. As is our custom, I invite you to say hello wherever you might be. And hi, Nivea. Wherever you might be, just say hello. It's a wonderful energetic practice to just uh, share space with people virtually. And hey, Roland. Thank you so much again, Roland, for all your support with my foundation. It just means so much. Aloha. So let's do what it is that we always do, and let us take a moment, a divine pause, and allow yourself to breathe your body. What does it mean to breathe your body? To just be mindful of the fact that you have the capability, the choice to energetically direct the breath to any part of you that might be in need of some special attention. And so that's always a wonderful practice. Hey, Chuck and Claire and Nan, wonderful to have you with me today. So divine pause, wherever you are, breathe the body. Let us take a moment. Let us understand what a gift the body is, and so let's oxygenate it on purpose. Let us send that breath again to our shoulders. In fact, let's pull our shoulders away from our ears, no matter where you are. Just pull them down, soften the forehead, if you will, and allow yourself to feel as though there is an energetic cord that is running parallel to the spine and then coming out of the crown of your head and just pulling you up a little bit so that you can decompress all of that and allow yourself to stretch. And it is in this place of conscious posturing, of conscious breathing, that we say an invocation of intention. We welcome the wisdom of the ancients to remember through us. Let's say that again. We welcome the wisdom of the ancients to remember through us. We welcome the power of the ancients to flow through us. We welcome the power of the ancients to flow through us, and we welcome the love of the ancients to create as us. We welcome the love of the ancients to create as us. And I know that as we create this invitation for all divine energy, for all support system, for everything that is particular for our soul and what is geared to support, to open our ears and our hearts so that we can receive the particularized message that is ours to receive, that is what we do. That is the spaciousness by which we provide ourselves to be available for the gifts today. And oh my, what gifts they are. And so it is with great gratitude for consciousness. It is with great gratitude for human liberties. It is great gratitude for freedom, not only within the internal, but in the external, that we still have availability to. Let us never forget, let us never take advantage of the fact that we do have access. And so let us maximize that freedom through the portal of love, through the portal of we consciousness, in operating and in serving and in uniting in brother, sister, all-encompassing union with all of humanity. Let us allow ourselves to just marinate as one divine presence. Let us know today, in deep celebration and again in deep thanksgiving, that what we are about to experience together is not only essential but beautiful, and that we receive it now fully with an open heart. And so it is. And so it is. So a little bit different background today. Been working very, very, very hard for my nonprofit, Kaleidoscope Child Foundation. We had a big event in Atlanta yesterday with our Walk for Education, and there have been so many other things on my plate that it was determined and planned to be able to get away and to come here to the coast in Florida and to dip my toes in the ocean. And once I am with you today, and then once I have a 90-minute teaching this afternoon, I'm shutting her down for a little bit for some divine pause and rest, and to work on my book more. And so I receive all of your good blessings that that's exactly what happens for me. And I had a great rest last night, so here we are. I hope you too are finding yourself in a place of balance and understanding the necessity and the importance of that. And that's what I want to talk to you about, but we're going to enter it from a different vantage point in terms of balance. So I'm going to share another story with you again about Ram Dass. And one of my affinities for Ram Dass is I feel that our shared paths are so mirrored because of our love of India. And if you know anything about his life, you know his journeying there was the impetus that began to open up his relationship with his guru Maharaji and expand his teachings. And he shared how when he first went to India, how horrified he was at the conditions. That as he looked around and he saw mass poverty, it hurt his heart. It tugged on that empathetic part of us that wants to do something. And I remember when he talked about finally having FaceTime with Maharaji, about how he wanted to take and ship over a vehicle to India so that he could ride through the streets and he could pass out and distribute all kinds of aid and support and nourishment and medical supplies, and because it's just, again, so viscerally overwhelming. And he always talked about how Maharaji listened and smiled and said, well, if that's what you feel led to do. But the caveat or the afterthought or comment from Maharaji was, Ram Dass, can't you see that it's all perfect? And Ram Dass would talk about how angry that response would make him, how just horrified he would be at the apparent apathy of Maharaji for the evidence of everything being in need. And then that's where the lesson begins. That's really where this incredible teacher's life took a 180. It's where his focus began to be in serving the suffering, and in serving the dying, and in serving people who were in the soup, if you will, of all of that overwhelming human experience. And I think that you and I have that same empathetic reaction within us when we look at the conditions of our world, when we see just within our own country how the wildfires are just so overwhelmingly devastating people's lives, when we see how the virus and all of the messaging around the pandemic continues to affect us spiritually, physically, economically, psychologically, when we start to see the onslaught of this suffering, there is this natural thing inside of us that A, can sometimes feel paralyzing, and B, can sometimes make us feel as though we are somewhat impotent in our abilities to help, and C, cause us to move into a freneticism, in trying to attack the problem with this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. And for fear that if we're not doing that, we might succumb to some kind of numbing out. And so Ram Dass said in one of his podcasts, he said, people are afraid to give up their upset for fear that they will become apathetic. Let me say that again. People are afraid to give up their upset for fear that they will become apathetic. And I listened to that, and I said, what he's describing is the great paradox. Because until you and I completely, and listen to these words very carefully, until you and I can completely give up the external upset, then you and I will not be able to access, or we will not have the spaciousness to be able to demonstrate pure compassion. This is so important that I'm going to say it a couple of times, and I want you to observe your breathing when you hear this. I want you to listen, because we're going to go really into some juicy territory about how this is applicable for us and how you and I can best serve humanity, okay? So bear with me. I'm going to repeat it again. People are afraid to give up their upset. What does that mean? People are afraid that if they, the ones who truly want to help, we are the ones who are afraid that if we give up some kind of urgency, if we give up some kind of getting dirty in the muck and the mire of the problem, if we give up the emotionality of our upset, there is a fear that perhaps we will become so numb or so apathetic that we won't be good to anyone. But the great paradox, and this is what the wise Maharaji was trying to get Baba Ram Dass to understand. The great paradox is that until you and I can completely, that's a tall order, I understand, but until you and I can we'll say even in an individual moment, if we can completely in an individual moment give up external upset, then what we access, what we allow and have space for, is the energized and the potency of pure compassion. And we can demonstrate that in the most efficient way. In the most efficient way. And so I'll add this to it. I learned just through my own framework of growing up and in my what I thought was my spiritual maturity, or what I thought was my purpose. I learned that if I stay locked in the role of the helper, then in order for me to keep that identity alive, the role of the helper, in order for me to keep that identity alive, then I will always need to keep someone else locked into the role of needing to be helped. And that's the last thing that I want to do. In a continuing education course for ministers, we were asked how we felt about certain titles, about who we were. You know, there's the old title about being the shepherd. But if we have an affinity for identifying ourselves, myself as a minister, as a shepherd, then what I need to do to keep that identity alive is I need sheep. And I don't want sheep. I don't want anyone to take on the role or to be locked into the identity of sheep. What I want is for all of us to operate in the equilibrium, in the give and the take of teacher-student role continuously, and that is partnership. That's spiritual partnership, that's conscious partnership, that's equanimity, that is empowerment. And what we are looking at is the greatest revelation perhaps for us to experience as a human in this human skin suit. The greatest revelation is to understand that we cannot attack a one-dimensional problem. We cannot enter into a one-dimensional problem that appears to need to be fixed with a one-dimensional approach. We have to cultivate a multi-dimensionality, again, which is what Maharaji was trying to teach Baba Ram Das. He was not saying don't do anything. He was saying that the consciousness by which you're going into this will burn you out. You must cultivate that even in the appearance of what it looks to be horrifying, that there is a perfection there that is beyond human comprehension, human vocabulary, and that what we are doing is we are working out our dharma. What we are doing is we are working out our karma yoga. What is our path? What is ours to do? And when you are going to do what is your karma yoga, when you're going to do and practice your dharma, this is the most potent thing that you can have in your awareness. Because again, you and I will find ourselves so beaten down and so weary that we will become imbalanced. And then we won't be good to anyone out there or to ourselves. This is the great paradox, and this is perhaps the hardest lesson for us to understand. And I speak from experience because in my travels in India, sometimes maybe you've heard me tell the story of the first time that I went. And I remember getting on a motorbike on the back of two strangers because they wanted to know if I wanted to go see the cave where Siddhartha lived for 7 years before he gained enlightenment and became the Buddha. And it happened to be on the outskirts of Bodh Gaya. And I'm like, sure. I remember writing a little note in my ashram room that if I don't come back, this is what happened. But it was a profound experience. I will tell you it. I've written about it and talked about it so many times because it's still such a moment in my heart that shifted a great deal, because this was the cave that Siddhartha lived in for 7 years with a bunch of ascetics. And the messaging around him is you have to suffer. You have to suffer for your enlightenment. You have to suffer in order to serve. You have to suffer in order to acquire God's love. It took him 7 years subsisting on a few grains of rice and barely enough water to stay alive, until who knows what day it was that he woke in that cave and said, enough. Enough. This is not the way to enlightenment. And he began to crawl his way or stumble his way from that cave to eventually where he got to the Bodhi tree. And so I remember getting to that cave. And I remember these guys were so wise because they brought me before I even knew that tourists came there. And I had the cave all to myself for 25 minutes. And I remember sitting in that silence and connecting and going, what is it? What is it? What has to occur in our lives for us to be able to go, enough? Enough with settling for our attacking effect to the place where we burn out. Enough of marginalized expression. Enough with accepting less, enough with going, well, this is as good as it gets. Enough of that. Give me over, lean me into, pull me out, let me stumble away from some shelter that tells me that this is all that I can do, so that I can become more enlightened and I can offer more to the world. And when I bring that back and we talk about what I first said, that people are afraid. People are afraid that if they give up their upset, if they give up the long suffering, that somehow they will become apathetic, is the exact opposite. We must learn to not run away from the upset, but we must learn to look beyond the upset and become enlightened enough to say that in a multi-dimensional experience that God is ever present. If you are on here, you must have some connection to a metaphysical leaning, to some kind of acceptance of an idea of consciousness, and that things are not as they appear. The great seduction is trying to battle the effect at the level of the effect. When Jesus said to the disciples, I will make you fishers of men, the greater reality of that was when he said, toss your net on the other side of the boat. When they were complaining about not being able to catch any fish, when what he was saying was, change your approach to the way in which you integrate into the world, in the way in which you access what it is that you need. And if so, I will teach you how to fish in such a way that you will feed multitudes, not necessarily literally, but beyond literally. I will teach you how to feed and nourish humanity. And isn't that what each of us are here to do? I will make you fishers of humanity. And so, how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, when I walked out of that cave and I came down, there were lepers, there were people crawling without any arms and legs, they were screaming, some were reaching out at my ankles, and that was the part that I had not expected, because when I walked up to the cave, walked up the side of the mountain to the cave, they weren't there. But when I came out of the cave, when I came down the mountain, the sun had come up and there they were. And that was the kind of suffering that Ram Dass was wanting to do. It's the same kind of suffering that I saw in Cambodia. It's the same kind of suffering that I have seen in the bowels of the villages in Guatemala with these poor young girls who are trapped in these slave labor situations. It's the same kind of suffering that I've seen throughout India. And I want to be in it for the long term. You want to be in it to maximize your service to humanity. So what does that mean? That means that somehow in our spiritual work, we have to find a way to go, can't you see the perfection in this? So in some regard, they're playing a role and I'm playing a role. When I'm suffering, I'm playing a role. That is not dismissing or bypassing the small r reality of what we go through in the human experience. But it is a huge call for us who choose to serve in a way that goes beyond the effect. I hope you can understand what I'm trying to say. It's not about dismissing the need. It's about energizing yourself enough so that when you enter into the need, you have more, you have the spaciousness, you have the power to be able to do it in a way that teaches people how to fish, that teaches people how to rise above, that helps you not see or lock them in as the person who needs to be helped, which then keeps you in the space of being the helper. And so it's a 180 with regards to how much is thrown at us through media, how much is thrown at us through social media, how much is thrown at us about how you need to do it and how you need to advocate. If we were a company and you were the CEO of this company, would you want a team that was so conscious and vigilant that they had a long-term strategy? Or would you want a team that was made up of people who only could be in that crisis point and then burn out, and then be in that crisis point and then burn out? We want to do it so that even in the midst of the crisis, there is a calm, there is a knowing, there is a beauty that begins to serve. You may never walk the streets of India. You may never see those types of horrors, but you will see things and you will read things and you will be drawn to things in your circle of influence that will pull at you. And I'm saying don't turn away from it. I'm saying turn to it with an accomplished wisdom, with a deep-rooted cultivation of what is yours to do. And don't let anyone tell you that you're wrong. And don't let anyone say, why aren't you upset at this level? Ram Dass said people are afraid to give up their upset for fear that they will become apathetic. It's the great paradox that until we are able to give up or to release that external upset, until we're able to do that, we will not have the experience of the potency of compassion. This might be something that you'll have to listen to a couple of times. This might be something that you'll need to sit with in the quiet of your own thoughts, your form of meditation. This might be something that you will need to marinate with. I know that I do. I know that I would even say every single day, I find myself wanting to lock particular individuals in what is needed as the person that needs help, rather than wanting to empower them. And so I'm in this with you. This is a constant learning. This is a constant reframe. In my years of platform ministry, I would often say, a powerful mantra is this: even in the apparent absence of. Even in the apparent absence of. I would tell my students, when you feel drained, when you feel helpless, to repeat to yourself, even in the apparent absence of. So even in the apparent absence of solution, there is solution. Even in the apparent absence of peace, there is peace. Our job then is to continue to look through the one-layer dimension of the upset until we are able to see that peace. And then what? We walk into the upset. We walk into the raging fires. We walk into the suffering. And we are able to serve. We are able to love. We are able to remember. We are able to be a part of a team, a spiritual company of souls, if you will, that does great and mighty work. I find that this is so necessary for me, for the people who serve with Kaleidoscope Child Foundation, for us to continue to remember, because I don't want to lock any child into the identity of needing to be helped. I want to empower them so that they are taught how to fish, so that generations from now, they stand powerfully on their own. And I know that that's what you and I are here to do. That's my service to you. That's your service to me when I forget. Oh, take this, my beautiful friends, take this. Let us help one another to remember. Thank you for your support. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for the kind expressions and the way that you have come and we have created this virtual family. Thank you for your financial support. Thank you for your love. Thank you for allowing me to be teachable. And I hope that you are also fluid in your ability to be teachable as well. May whatever it is that be the gift from this message unveil itself perfectly for you this week, and the same for me as I take the intention to be able to receive and to be nourished as well. Know that you are loved. Know that you are appreciated. Know that your energy is felt. Know how excited I am to come and to join you in this half hour on Sundays. Take that into your heart. Claim the miraculous as your normal. And I'll see you next time.